Welcome to Mick and the Psychic, where we leave no stone unturned as we explore all things outside the apparent physical realm.
There is no intent to teach or make you believe or disbelieve anything. It is just a safe space to listen and explore with us.
So for this next episode, you have permission to open your heart and mind as you join myself and Xavier on this deep dive into the unknown.
But I've never spoken to an animal that was terrified to die.
Wow.
Never.
Okay.
They are so, it's to them, it's just a transition. There's no fear in dying. But a lot of times they will hold on for us because they're afraid of how we're handling it.
Have Nancy Mello, and Nancy is an animal communicator, evidential medium, speaker, and she was even a podcaster once upon a time. Some of you may have seen her on her TikTok and her socials. It's obviously very popular. But as an animal communicator, she spent her quarantine during COVID finding lost pets, which is crazy. Since she found out that she can actually do this, she's found over 120 pets, which is amazing. Nancy does incredible work with people and their animals at end of life, which is such a hard time for us to care for our furry family members during this time. And I promise I won't cry.
Oh my
Or
goodness.
try not to cry. Okay, cool.
All for both of us at the moment.
Oh my God. Being a clairvoyant and a medium, obviously she helps the less hairy of us also. So who knows where this conversation is going to go. We've already started with, I don't know, astronauts and soil quality in Northwest US. But with no further ado, let's welcome Nancy to the show. Nancy, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much.
That was...
I love it. I love it. It's my kind of podcast. We just kind of go off.
Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a ride. Xavier, you normally do the first question. I don't want to jump in yet, but I'm in animal communication.
Well, I purposely didn't I like to be surprised. So Mick does the intro and reads about you, and then I found you, I suppose, and I just went, I'm not reading all the details. So what is this? You mean you found lost pets during COVID?
Great place to start.
How did that come about? Then we can maybe go backwards.
Quite randomly, like everything else in my life. So I mean, I had a small, I had a social media following, and I had animal communicator, and I'm a medium, and like it was just as COVID was starting, and I remember I was getting out of the shower, and I got this text on this DM on Instagram. Can you help us find our lost dog? And I was like, and I messaged immediately back. I was like, I don't do that stuff. Now I haven't tried. At that point I hadn't tried, but I was like, no, I don't do that stuff. Right. And they said, please, he's diabetic, or she's diabetic. And I went, I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, okay. Well, it turned out they were just across the Sound. So I'm in New England, and they were just across the Sound. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, okay, let me see what I can do. Let me try, because like the dog had already been lost a couple days. And actually, I think the dog, there's a picture of the dog right behind me somewhere. So anyway, so I was like, okay, I see like a red barn, or like a red shed, and like a long dirt road. And I'll never forget, the response was, long dirt road, we're on Long Island. And Long Island is like close to New York City, and it's very,
of course, very dense.
It's houses.
Yeah.
And I remember them going, dirt road? There's no dirt roads here.
It's like country Philadelphia.
This is what I'm sensing. And so the next day, like I told them, like, okay, this is where I see. And I felt like Ollie, the dog, was stuck. And I kept saying, I feel like he's stuck. I feel like he can't get out. And so I remember going to sleep that night and saying, okay, I'm going to work with him, like, to get out. And I remember the very next day was like the last day before everything shut down, because I was going to visit a friend, and I'm texting back with several members of this family. And I'm like, I feel like he's stuck, and I'm going to work with him. So I'm working with him. And I said, because he said, I can't. He said it would, like, he'd have to dislocate something. And I said, whatever you have to do, you have to get out. They can't, because no one could see him from where he was. And I kept seeing this red barn, or this red shed, and he was under, and I kept hearing under, but along Dirt Road. And so they had like 20 people out searching. And I was able to like triangulate the area where he was on Google. So anyway, so I'm like driving, and I'm kind of texting, and I'm still working with him, get out. And like, I get where I'm going, and 10 minutes later, they found him, and he was sitting outside of a red shed, completely in a diabetic, like ketosis, almost like dazed.
Yeah.
He had freed himself, and they had actually looked at the house before, like a couple days prior, but because he had been stuck, he couldn't get out. And so he was dazed. They rushed him to the veterinarian, and he spent like 3 or 4 days because the vet said he would have lasted like one more hour.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Um,
okay. Wow.
and he is still alive today. I still get lovely messages from his family. I adore his family. Like I am close with a few people, and we message back and forth to say, and his name was Ollie, and that started it all. And he's still alive, and this was 2-3 years ago, and he just
Oh
he
my
he
God.
yeah, so that started it, and then it went from that, and then it was just one thing after another. And I remember there was this other dog, and I'll never forget, it was this young girl, probably 16, 17, and I remember when I was hearing it, like one of the other siblings was like giving her crap, and she's like, "Stop, I know this is gonna work." And I remember going, "Oh shoot, this better work, or else." you
Oh
know
yeah. No pressure.
yeah, and I think she'd actually been referred from Ollie's family. So I was like, "Oh
Okay.
hell."
Okay.
You
Great.
know,
So
and I kept
expectation
seeing
is up here
I
for a
I
miracle.
I usually like burn with expectation, but it was another one of those things where I was like, "Okay, this is what I see." And 30 minutes later, I get a picture of him found right where I said,
Oh,
safe and sound. And so it just started taking off, and it didn't get I mean, it started going crazy, and then I got contacted on social media again, and there was a woman that's car had gotten stolen with the cat in the car,
Oh.
and she had stepped out of her car, and the car had gotten stolen. And I worked with her and the cat, and the TikTok video that I recorded with her went viral and got all this attention, and we ended up finding the cat a couple days later. But what's crazy about that is someone from the Washington Post heard about the story. And then they
Oh.
mentioned me in the story with the
cool.
cat.
Oh no.
And then that took it just to another level. Like that was like, okay, all right. Like and when this reporter called me, I didn't even think anything much about it. Like, right. Like if I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, okay, it's Washington Post, but I wasn't like, I'm an animal communicator. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you really gonna talk to me? But the woman turned out to be from California. And I guess like, if you're from California, you automatically have an in. Anyway, I'm like chatting with her. I don't think she's gonna like feature me, right? I'm just like chatting with her. Sure, how can I help? Blah, blah, blah. Turns out like half of the thing was about how I helped. And
Wow.
so that
It was
it
your
took off.
time to shine. It's just
Yeah.
I I I do what I can. And it's funny because as a animal communicator and a psychic, like I can't help being surprised because like I just hear stuff, so I it's like I'm working with a missing pet right now up in New England, and a real tragic story. The family got in a car accident, and thank goodness everyone's okay, but the dog went missing, and the dog's been missing a month now. And so like last night I was like, okay, this is the information that checked out, and then today I had a session with them, and then that stuff is checking out. And I'm always like, when they're like, oh
Wow.
yeah, that makes sense, that, and I'm always like, holy crow, like I'm surprised with them that it makes
yes.
sense.
There's a
I'm like,
humbleness in
really?
that, which is good. Yes,
Like
yes. It
that
happened
makes
to
sense,
me. I
really?
get surprised all the time too. You're just like,
Really?
it's great.
That worked?
Good
Okay.
job.
Anyway, so, I mean, it's a wild ride. And missing pets is it's challenging because there's so much emotion involved. There's so much, and the sad thing is you can't explain when you can't find them. Like sometimes the universe says no. And
That's right. Yeah.
I have 355 5-star reviews, but 5-star reviews, but I will tell you there are 2 1-star, both from missing pets, where it was like you get in such an emotional state, and then my heart just breaks, and then you become close to them because you're working with them very close, sometimes for weeks you're working with them. And so like I can totally understand where at the end of the day, when they, again, because there's so much expectation on you, right?
Yes, that's right.
And
Yeah.
but you can't say, I don't know how sometimes God says yes. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. And that's what breaks my heart is
Yeah.
like, if I could, I would help all of them. But how do you, I can't explain when I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
can't explain why I was meant to help Ollie from Long Island and I wasn't able to help so and so. Like,
Yeah.
So that
And,
part just
that's what breaks
through
me up.
for you. Yeah, like so you can't tune into the one you didn't get to find and ask them why. They don't give you that like clarity, or have you
Honestly,
tried
I
that?
don't think I think I'm usually just so hard on myself that I don't want to ask. Like, I just kind of go, okay. And I just kind of accept that there's a reason to it.
I
And
was
I
just-
just kind of let that.
Yeah, sorry, I was just being shown like it could be part of their like tuning in, because medium as well, like you, and
Yeah.
then the past lives also is my jam.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
like tuning into maybe what their lessons are, and maybe
Yeah.
possibly asking them, so why? Because I know sometimes I don't know if you do this too, but with mediumship, we might explain when someone's crossed over and they're connecting with them, why they left at that time and what their lessons were.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So you
Oh,
might
yeah.
be able to do that with an animal as
Yeah.
well.
With missing pets, it's so fragile though.
Yeah,
Like
they're
it's
our
hard.
babies.
It's so fragile. It's like, so it would be, I think, yeah, it would be one thing if like they came back to me like 6 months later and we talk, and that's happened a
Yes.
few times where we talk about the reason. And I have a few clients that I adore, like maybe I wasn't able to help find their animal, but we were able to connect with all this other stuff. And we still have a wonderful relationship back and forth.
Oh,
But
good.
I think it's really hard, like when if an animal has passed and you didn't find them, and it's hard to be like, so let's talk about why.
Yeah.
You know?
And
Yeah.
they don't need that information. That's the thing.
Might be something later, or if at
Yeah.
all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I've done that later, but a lot of times it's just like it's such a grief moment that
Yeah. Doesn't help. It's unhelpful anyway. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I had a client in hypnosis the other day, and she was looking at a whole lot of different things and looking at answers in her life and wanting more from her life, and like that there is more for her in this life, and why. What do I need to do to get to that? Why do these things happen? And she was doing some past lives, and we brought her through that part. Well, I brought her through that past life and then into another time. And she asked that question, and she just went really still and started laughing. And she said, I'm looking for cause and effect, but that cause and effect is something that I'm putting on there. Everything is just soup, which was hilarious. It's like, it's just all soup. So sometimes we put meanings to things, and maybe there are different meanings behind that, but then as part of the whole canvas of everything going on, we don't have the whole picture anyway. So it's it's all just happening. It's just unfortunate when, when you've got that role as the psychic and you're there to help someone, and it's not up to you doing a better job. It's just whether or not this is meant to happen or not.
And it's hard because as a psychic, you already are having to prove yourself. There's always going to be people going, yeah, prove it, yeah, do this. And so when you do let someone down, you're almost playing into that stereotype of not being able to come through. Now it may be because of XYZ, but they're not thinking of that. They're just thinking, it's one more reason to say you're a scam, you played me, you did this. Even if and if of course I would never ever help unless I could. Like, I'm never going to say yes unless I know I can, or unless I feel confident. I would never ever I would never ever do that. But it's easy for me to say that because I know myself. But looking from outside, and you're hearing friends and family, and they're going, oh, why did you trust that person? They're just bah, 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 bah. You know what I mean? And no. But so there's that negativity that people are surrounded by, but it just goes into your own insecurities about, as a psychic, or as with your own gifts, as far as like, well, was I really hearing that? And then you start to doubt yourself. You know what I mean? So it's just a spiral.
Yeah.
So it's
you've got to be around shiny people. You've got to be around people that understand that and the pitfalls of that, so that you can continue to provide. It's a big thing to have these gifts to be able to share with people, and it's a hard gift to carry, but it's such an important one. And the fact that not everyone practices these gifts or develops these gifts makes it even more important for those that do, and that get persecuted for it, but still continue to do it because they just don't want to ignore the messages that come through.
We love interviewing experts from different fields about all things outside the apparent physical realm.
And the one constant is these phenomena are transmitted through energy.
So we sought out and teamed up with Subtle Energy Science
to bring you, our listeners,
energetic encoded technology you can use on your phone, laptop, computer, or tablet.
turning your device into a powerful personal quantum energy tool. Now, we're not the creators, or are we qualified enough to explain it at all, but there is a mind-blowing number of scientific studies available on their website.
We get to try their range ourselves so we can give an honest review. And until the end of April, we've got 20% off the Mystic with promo code MATP-861.
And I love using the Mystic. I love it more than anything else. And I notice it really helps if you want to open up your heart or tune in to a deeper awareness.
Now back to the show.
Speaking of the messages that come through, though, what happens when, say for Ollie, do you get like a data download of all this information of where Ollie is, or do you hear Ollie try and communicate with you? Like, how did it come through for you in that case?
I think with Ollie's particular case, I was getting sorry about that.
That's
I was
okay.
getting images. I immediately got seen and got shown an image. But then I'm also was working with Ollie personally. So when I was hearing stuck, that was obviously him saying stuck.
Okay.
Like this afternoon when I was working with this dog that's missing after the car accident, I was getting also the dog's perspective of like, this is how the dog's feeling. I was doing like a health check of the dog, but I was also giving images of the surrounding area. I'll also get words, numbers. So words like one of the first clients I helped find a dog, and I kept hearing vines, and I was like, the dog is in vines. Well, it turned out the dog was found on Vine Street. So
Oh wow. Okay.
So words. So it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And it's tricky, isn't it? Trying to interpret sometimes. You just
Oh my God.
say what
Yeah.
pops up and
Yeah.
not try to figure it out what it means. Just say it because it's going to mean something somewhere. And I know sometimes psychics, when they're learning as well, I know it happened to me in the early days, you just assume it means one thing and they can take you kind of a different way. So you just like
I feel like I do that every day. That's why I take notes when I take notes when I'm talking to someone, because I find a lot of times in animal language, like they'll say one thing and it'll mean three things. Like
Sure.
it'll mean like different things. It'll like kind of touch on different things. And so you're right. Like that's why I love, I always tell people like, this is a conversation. This isn't just me speaking for 30 minutes. I don't have a voice like Morgan Freeman or Nicole Kidman. Like you don't want to just hear me speak for 30 minutes, but it is a give and take, because I'm going to say something and I'm not going to know what it means. I'm going to have, like, for instance, I was working with an end of life pet tonight, a wonderful dog that's getting ready to pass. And I heard marshmallow. And I was like, and then I heard s'more, and I'm like, what the hell? Of course, I don't like a s'more. Like, I don't, okay. And so I told her s'more, and apparently they had like a campfire for the dog 2 nights prior, and he was refusing to take his medicine. And
Because he wanted s'mores.
He wanted s'mores. Now, I would never give, and I'm like, this is awesome. But apparently he'd been given s'mores for his entire life, without the chocolate. And he had a couple the other night and he wanted more. Now, this didn't mean anything to me, but to him, it meant two things. It meant, one, this was my memory of it, that we just did it. And two, this is how I'm going to take my medicine. And sure enough, so I was like, well, why don't, especially with end of life, especially if they're refusing medication, we'll do it on the phone together. So I'll be like, okay, the cat wants peanut butter, and then we'll do it. So I'm working with the animal, trying and just explaining to them, okay, if you want to keep going, especially if they really are still wanting to fight, you have to take your medicine. But to him, and sure enough, he took it with the marshmallow. Because that's what he had wanted all along. Amazing. But again, to me, that means nothing, right? Because but to him, it meant a couple different things. So that's why, but it took the owner going, okay, well, we had s'mores the night before. Okay, check. Oh, wow. Okay, he likes them. Check. So, but it's a conversation.
Yeah, you got to work it out together. You need more data.
100%. And
so much
people
data
don't realize that. Some people don't realize that, and they just want to listen. But I don't.
Well, some people think it's fishing.
Yeah, I was going to say, some people don't want to, we've all had those that just sit there and just want to test you out and just tell me stuff and I'll see.
But you know what? I don't know if I'm picking up on the dog next door. Yeah. I don't know if I'm picking up on your late cat that's also trying to come through.
Well, and if it's German, it's the German Shepherd next door. So, I mean, that's obvious, right? The German Shepherds all speak German. No, that wasn't going to be one of my questions. I promise, Nancy.
What people don't realize, though, is if they're sitting there with their arms crossed and just waiting for you to say stuff, you're closing the love bridge between the information getting through. So if you mention to them something and they give you a yes or no kind of confirmation, it is like the floodgates open, like their heart's open, they're ready to receive, they're connected to their animal, or if it's just for them and you're reading for them, like it's going to all flow out.
Which unfortunately, that sounds convenient as well. So if people aren't going to believe,
then they
don't go to a psychic to try and change your mind. Just don't believe.
Yeah,
and just
I'll
leave
never
psychics
forget,
alone.
I had a
Save
man
your money.
tell me, 4 years ago, because it was pre-COVID, I had a man tell me, he said, you are going to make me believe in God. He said, you will make me believe in God. I need to know. And I looked at him and said, it's not my job.
No.
It's not my job to make you believe in God. I said, I was like, no, that is not my job. I said, so that's why on my website, I have faith is believing, then possible is possible. You have to have that faith. You have to have, like I had this couple tonight, from a city that is known to be very, not aggressive, but very manly. And there was this guy and he had
Boston.
Actually, it was near Boston. Yeah, it was near Boston. Yeah. There you go. Oh, maybe you're psychic. I'm teasing. But anyway,
nope, just being there. Just saying.
He was sitting there with his partner, and but he had a smile on his face. And I remember going, I'm not going to judge him. And the dog came right through, and the dog had passed, but the dog was like, blah, blah, blah. And he just starts laughing. And I was like, okay. Because once they start laughing, once they start smiling and going, that's right, or da 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 da. And then it got to the point where he was helping me because the dog was talking about, apparently one of the family members was sneaking food to this dog on a lazy boy. So a lazy boy is like a big armchair. And I was like, but there's another thing. But I kept hearing lazy boy. And then the guy was helping me. He's like, no, I know the chair you're talking about. Because I was like, I'm trying to describe this chair, but he was helping me. So if you're open already, no matter what you look like, no matter your background, just be open, because I'm not trying to screw you. You know what I mean? I'm not like you're psychic down, I'm not putting on any air.
And it's actually really good to question things. And it's, I think it's really good to judge stuff, but there's a time and a place. So when you're there, don't judge it. Just go with it and be involved in it and see what comes up. And then afterwards, look back and go, then judge it. But if you're judging it during, you're just going to close everything off. So if you're going to try something, like actually try and then look back and then judge it. You're not silly.
And instead of just accusing us that we're full of it, because like you say, like you're fishing.
Do that later.
Yeah, like
there's plenty that are full of it. Like that's the thing. Like I've been to, when I was a teenager, I went to see some psychics at different places, and some of them were really full of it, but it actually taught me the difference between genuine and like skills and not. And so like there's kind of sometimes it can ruin it for the perception people have.
100%. Well, and that's why I try to be so. I'm turning off my email. That's why I try and be so transparent on my social media. Like I'm an open book. Like you want to ask me something, as it, and I have no problem saying no. I have no problem saying I don't know. I have no problem saying I can't read you. Like when I decided to do this, I promised myself I'd never do this for the money. I wasn't going to just doing this for a paycheck. I was doing this to help people. But if
much easier ways to make money, Nancy.
But and that's the thing. Like that's the thing. Like, people don't get. They're just like, oh no. Like I'm working like as much. Like and it's so much energy. But no, I really try and be transparent. But at the same time, like I don't BS, and I'm very straight. I'm very to the point. But at the same time, like, if you're going to test me, I'm just going to be like, I don't need to expend my energy on someone that's just going to test me. I don't need your money if you're going to just sit there and
save your money, do something else. Yeah.
No, well, and that's the thing. Like, I don't need your money that bad that I'm going to be allowed to be treated like that. Because that's another thing that happens. Like, people will set it up, and I'll be connecting with their pets, and they'll have like, I find that, and these are people usually in very deep grief, and they'll make a promise themselves. Unless she says that my dog drank soup with letter P, then I'm not going to believe it. And so I'll be able to check every other box, but because I didn't talk about that one thing, then I'm
Yes.
full of it.
They're not
And
listening
it's
to
that
all the other
conditional
people.
belief. And I don't have the energy. I have so many other people that I could be helping that would be willing to accept my help. I don't need someone's energy. Like, for instance, I turned down a session a couple of weeks ago, and this person, had emailed me a few times, and there was just something. I just said, you know what? I just don't have the emotional capacity. And I emailed her back, and I just said, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't have the emotional capacity for this. I'm going to, I refunded her, and she got furious at me. You just don't want to do it. What'd she say? There's millions of people out there like you that I could trust. And I was going,
Then go. I just gave you money to go spend it on someone else.
she was like, you just don't want to. And I was like, well, yes, that's what I told you. I don't want to, but it's not because I didn't. And I would rather tell someone I don't have the emotional capacity for this right now, for whatever reason, than take your money and give you some BS answer. I will never ever BS anyone.
It's good maturity.
But I refuse. So I'm going to give you, like, if I have something going on with my kids, if there's a lot going on, I'm not going to just take your money and say, here, blah, 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 blah. No, that's just not me to just, I can't be fake.
Yeah.
Like a surgeon saying, like, having the eye problem, like something in their eye that day, and they're like, oh, it's right, I can do it anyway. Like, it's fine, I can see it.
But it's like, we're not supposed to have off days, right? Like, that's another expectation, is like that we're always on. Are you kidding me? Like,
oh yeah. I don't just walk around reading everybody's energy and winning permission.
But that's the assumption. That like people are
that's why sometimes when you introduce yourself, like, I know I've done this before, this is two kinds of people. Then say, oh, what do you do for work? I'm a psychic. They either go jump back and freak out, oh my god, she can read me and she knows I cheated on my wife, kind of energy. Or it's like, wow, what can you see around me? And they get really interested. They just assume we're switched on. Like, nothing. It costs $133 if you want to find out, though.
Okay, I might or might not have just told my spouse that today. Okay, here's the thing. So I usually,
do you charge your spouse?
You should. Maybe.
I like to joke that my spouse is still surprised we haven't won the lottery yet. Like,
oh yeah, same with mine.
We're gonna do an episode on that. I've tried to debunk that for your spouse, Xavier, but I don't think he wants to listen, because he
does not want to listen,
because he just wants the cash. I'm like, dude, you got to look at it rationally, but he just
I adore my spouse is he actually just is like literally in like days away from retiring. He's active duty Navy.
Oh wow.
And so I've been with him, we've been married 15 years, and he's a Navy submariner. And so he's an electrical engineer. That's his, or he would get so mad if I gave him the wrong engineer. He's a mechanical engineer. Forgive me. That's very different. He's a mechanical engineer. Yeah, God forbid. I will hear it all from the engineers if I don't get the right engineer.
That's right.
Anyway, so he's so practical. He's so here. And on there, like when we were dating, I would be like, because he lost his beloved grandfather a few years before I met him. And I would be like, oh, your grandfather said this. And he's like, oh, I must have told you that. And that was like the first year. And then like I started telling him feelings about things. I would be like, okay, And every time I would tell him a feeling about something, it would happen. And finally, a couple of years in, he like looked at me and he said, this is real. And I was like, well, I can tell you that. Like, like this is,
I'm not practicing my fraud on you. It is what it is.
But he's so practical. And now like he says, well, I can't explain it. But it doesn't, but he's so proud of me. He like, even at his last position, he was telling people what I did. Wow. Like, because I'm like, I don't want it to hurt his career. I don't ever want to hurt, I don't want it to influence anything. And he's just like, I don't care. He's like, I'm proud of you, which is just, that's why I'll keep him. Like,
Yeah, keep this one.
Good job.
Yeah. Even though we haven't won the lottery.
That's funny.
I've won the lottery with him.
Yeah. And look, it's, that's kind of, I feel like it's the same kind of thing as, why can't I have a horrific car accident where I end up in a wheelchair and then learn more about being able to receive from others? Like, you would never ask for that. It's like, why are you asking for the burden of winning the lottery?
Doesn't have to figure out what you do with it. Do you share it?
Have any idea the burden? It's like, I'll deal with it. It's like, I don't know. perfect
I
world.
don't-
Grass is
I
greener.
don't
It's
gamble.
not.
I don't gamble. I don't, and I'm not actually surprisingly, I'm not lucky at all. Like
Well,
well,
this
not
is
that I
why
really
you
believe
won't
in
win the
luck.
lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
I'm lucky.
Well,
I just haven't won the
that's
lottery.
true.
Yeah.
There's a
I-
practical aspect there. Yeah.
Back on animals, I have a question.
I've got so many.
So before you were finding lost pets, you're an animal communicator. So were people before that coming to you if their dog or horse or whatever was sick, or if they're trying to figure out what's going on with them? And because everyone would love, we've all seen Dr. Dolittle. Is that the movie?
Yeah. Why?
Okay,
Why are they
So good to
communicating?
know what they're thinking, or is it just
So
out of
interestingly
curiosity?
enough, so this is why like there's no coincidences and the universe is always in charge. So I've always been an animal communicator. Interestingly enough, and this is just how like backwards like everyone's thoughts are. Like I thought it was more believable if I came out as an evidential medium first, as a psychic
Mhm.
first, than an
Mhm.
animal communicator.
Okay.
So like the first couple of years, yeah, I've always had this connection, but I just kind of first couple of years I was just working in a psychic and a medium capacity. And then there were a couple of but I would read like my pet's friends, and I had one friend just like I kept reading her dog every time I talked to her on the phone, and I'd be like, oh, I'd kind of offhand, oh, she wants the dog bones in the red container, and she's like, Nancy, she's literally staring at the red container. And so
Wow.
I had people go, you need to do this, you need to do this. So my first client, and so I kind of was like shy, and I was like, so I can read animals, and if you want to just try. And my first client was an acquaintance that I knew in the community, and she came to me about her dog Cleo, and her dog Cleo wasn't dying, but was getting older, and she wanted to know what Cleo wanted to do. And so I connect with her sweet pup, and the Cleo starts talking about chasing after the seagulls. Well, it turns out that, and again, I knew who she was. I had met her, but I'd never been to her home. I don't know I didn't even know what town she lived in at the time. And so it turns out that every morning they would walk along the beach, and Cleo would chase the seagulls. So Cleo gave me this very specific list. And that's where I started realizing that animals have bucket lists just like people. So
Wow.
I read Cleo, and Cleo was not ready to go. So interestingly enough, a few months go by actually, and it was actually just around COVID as well. And the client messages me and says she's getting ready to go. And Cleo was actually, so not only was she my first pet client, but she was my first end of life client.
Wow.
So it was beautiful because it was right after COVID started. So I'm finding missing pets for the first time. COVID started, and now again the universe is like, okay, COVID, you are about to go start doing a bunch of things, like so I drive over to my client's house, and I remember like this was like handmade mask time when we're and
Yeah.
I
So
asked, and
useful.
yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm driving up, and there was a black dog that crossed my path when I went to park. And I go inside, and I'll never forget, Cleo lifted up her head and looked at me and said, "Are you here to take me?" And I just heard it in my head, just like a thought, just like, I need to get bananas at the grocery store. And she said, "Are you
Wow.
here to take me?" And without even thinking about it, I automatically respond in my head, just like a thought, "No, honey, I'm just here to say hello." And she put her head down, kind of like, oh. And so I just kind of sat with her, and she said, "Well, I'm waiting for the black dog. The black dog is waiting for me." Or she said, "The black dog is waiting for me. He's my friend." And I told my client who was sitting there, I said, "That's really interesting. A black dog just crossed my path." And the client broke into a smile. And she said that next door, Cleo had a best friend that was a black dog that passed a couple
Passed
years
away.
prior.
Wow.
This black dog that crossed my path was the next dog. So the neighbors had gotten another black dog, and that was the replacement for the dog that was waiting for Cleo.
Wow.
So I work with Cleo, and she's ready, and she wanted to pass outside, and she didn't want the dog next door. We like handled, she wanted it quiet, all these beautiful things. So Cleo passes a few days later. Then what's really cool, and again, this is during COVID, and I am just kind of finding my wings when it comes to all of this stuff, right? Like just no, like people are coming to me, but it's still quiet.
Whether you're ready for it or not, it's coming.
Well, so
Yeah.
Cleo comes to her in a dream, and she showed the client her picture up in lights and said, "People will be talking about me." So the client talk to me. And I said, oh, that's cool. I don't know what that means, right? Oh, that's really cool that Cleo came to you in a dream. I think it was a year, or it was, what's the issue? December, one of the issues of Dogster magazine, January 2022. January 2022. So Dogster magazine contacts me about 2 years later and says, hey, I hear you've done end of life work. Would you like, would you like,
Wow.
can we feature you? And I'm like, sure, great. So I talk about Cleo. Wouldn't you know that Cleo's story ends up in the magazine? So she was right all along that Cleo
Wow.
ended her name in lights.
It's a beautiful confirmation about how some things are just
But
out.
that's the thing, is that even Cleo knew, like
Yeah.
she knew. And of course, you're not psychic about yourself. So I wasn't thinking it was me, right? I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be famous. Like,
That's so interesting. I've never heard a psychic say that. I'm not psychic about myself. Is that a thing where, like with psychics and clairvoyance, that it's one of those things where it's like it's not
It's a bit harder
for
to
you?
read
It's just hard for you to read yourself because you're in it, I
agree.
guess.
yeah, because we're emotionally involved,
the
right?
ego
That's why it's
gets-
also that's why it's harder to read like I can read my kids, but I can't, right? Like, so if
Yeah.
it affects me, I'm not going to be able to read them, right? Because then I would be able to affect the outcome. And I think it's similar, like I'm not going to hear things that will affect the outcome that's supposed to happen in my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just
So
had one
with
of those
Cleo,
moments. I
yeah.
think I just had one of those moments where someone tells you in your 40s that arrow in the dashboard is the
Points to
angle,
to get your petrol.
is where the petrol side is, and you're like, how have I not known this my
I think
whole
I
life?
learned
I
that
feel
4
like I
years ago.
just had that.
Yeah, good job.
I feel like I just had that moment.
I
Just
think
then.
some people
That makes
listening just
sense.
had that moment.
Okay, good.
Oh, they would have gone, you what?
Not just me. Interesting. It makes me ask as well, and you've kind of answered the question, I think, in that last story. But when you're because like the dog or cat or the pet, I'll say the pet can't speak English.
Yeah.
And so the information that comes to you is obviously in not necessarily in a way that they could communicate, but in a way that you can understand.
Yes.
So it's more what you understand. So the German
Yeah.
Shepherd, it'll still come through in English, not in German.
Yeah. So I work with people and pets all over the world. And
Yes.
and it was actually, it's interesting and it's funny, but it makes sense. So I always say that I can connect with people and pets through their eyes. And I had a very important question yesterday, a DM, and it said, well, my cats don't have eyes, like they've lost their eyes. Can you still connect? And I was like, well, yeah, because it's it's like that's kind of the vehicle. But no, so I've worked with
not a
pets.
mechanical thing that happens, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But it's a valid question, honestly.
Yeah, I guess so.
I've worked with pets in over 32 countries, and I've worked with people, and same thing as in a medium capacity. And so when I'm talking to people that have passed, I'll hear certain words in dialects. But for the record, I'm a horrible linguist. I have attempted to learn a couple other languages, and my brain just doesn't work that way. But I will hear things, and this is what I think this is like so cool, is I will hear words that there's no way I would know, or I will sound something out. And I am just like, or else like a lot of one way that I guess people like to connect their past is like food. So I have this wonderful Turkish client, and I actually work with her cat that had passed, and I work with her every couple of months. But her grandmother comes through, and her grandmother, so she was pregnant, and I was working with her throughout the pregnancy, and her grandmother kept giving her recipes, but she was saying it in Turkish, and so she would give me the Turkish name of the food.
Wow.
And so I would be, it sounds like blah, 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 blah. And I have a horrible ear for languages, but she would come through. So it's the same thing I can work with animals all over the world, because it's not, again, we're talking about, it's not English, it's through thought. So just
telepathic
like,
or whatever.
it's telepathic. So it's just like with a good question that I've kind of realized what it is so animals see in different color tones than we do. So how do I know that they want the red ball and or the red ball, or they want the blue and green package of snacks? And what I've realized is, even though they're seeing it in a different tone, it's how it's appearing to me. So they may be seeing it in different tones, but it's translating in my head the same way, and it's giving me the colors or the color family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Oh, that's
It's
amazing.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating because like I'm very evidential, right? I really
Mhm.
try and prove everything I'm saying.
Mhm.
But even there's a lot of things I go, I don't know how the hell I'm doing this.
Yeah.
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 Just surmise, but like you might not ever actually know the answer. We're just telling it how it
It's
is.
what I experience. But that's like anything in life. It's like explaining something absolutely physical that I experience. You know, the table that's in front of me as being solid. In reality, it's not. There's a lot of space in between, but I experience it as solid. It's just that other people experience it as solid. So I'm saying that this is a solid table, but in reality, all that's true is I'm experiencing this table as being solid in front of me. There's no different to that than, you know, I'm psychic. It's
And I
like
think
I'm
that's a beautiful way
experiencing
of putting
psychic
it.
stuff. I can just tell you what I experience. What's true or not true? Well, above our pay
Well,
grade.
and
We're
that's
here.
why when people say like what we do is impossible, and it's like, well, what's possible then? Because everything that we say is possible is based on our own experiences.
Correct.
And,
That's right.
and our own programming.
Mhm.
And so when a lot of people say impossible, my first question is like, what church are you going to?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's from organized religion, or it's a heavily scientific background. And we're, but fascinating. The thing about the scientific background is actually my number, like, because I'm big on numbers, is the highest, the profession that I get the most from is actually doctors, nurses,
Interesting.
and veterinarians are my highest. Like
Mhm.
I had a brain surgeon a couple of months ago, and believe me, I picked her brain as much as she picked mine. But I had a neurosurgeon. I had like cancer doctors, oncologists come to me, and of course, after I'm always like thanking them, and then I say, how are you, like, how are you doing this? And they all say something similar, except the neurosurgeon, which said something fascinating. But they say, we see things all the time in our practice we can't prove. We
Yeah,
see
that's
things
good.
that we can't explain.
Yeah.
But the neurosurgeon, it was fascinating what she said. So I was like, how are you, how can you reason this for me? And she said that her thought, she said, first of all, we only understand 5 to 10% of the brain. She said, we don't understand, even as doctors operating on, we do not understand things. And it's the biggest misconception is that we do. She said the brain is the most misunderstood muscle. And her thought was that people that have abilities, it's coming back from a fight or flight, primal, Homo sapien, kind of when we had to survive. And she thinks it's from that, a genetic component from that era, that some of us have carried along, but it's that we had to be intuitive to survive, yeah. And that we have, over time, we have turned it off or not used that ability. It's similar to how we have a, oh my God, I got it removed, an appendix, similar to how we have an appendix that we don't use anymore. So similar to that, there's a part of the brain that we can use that other people have just turned off. But that would make sense then why a lot of people can be taught it, at least in some form, right? We can be taught how to open. So that would make sense that it is a part of the brain that just hasn't been utilized in thousands of years.
Yeah.
But I was like, that makes perfect sense to me, because it's genetic. So I can trace it, at least on one side, I can trace it back to at least my great grandfather. He was a doctor, and he got in a horrible accident and couldn't walk, and he was like dying. And someone did a healing over him, miraculously healed. And he wrote about this. He actually founded some form of Christian, I don't know, some movement. But anyway, so he was healed miraculously after someone talked to him, prayed to him, and he started healing people through touch. And this was in the 1800s.
Oh, so
and
is this like Quakers or something?
Well, it was called the PISAH, PISAH movement, and he formed a healing church in Southern California, in modern day Los Angeles. And he had a healing center. And he would heal people by touch. And it's part of some, forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head, some part of some form of Christianity now. But there was evidence on top of evidence on top of evidence that he was able to heal people. And it was like the healing that he had awakened that part of his brain.
Activated something.
So it's trace, so I can trace back from that, and I'm sure more, but and then I can trace down. And I have a really short TikTok showing like here's my family line and what I've been able to trace. So, and it's really, what's really cool is you can talk to other people with these abilities and you'll say, oh yeah, my mom had it, my so and so had it. Like we can all trace it back, which again goes back to what the neurosurgeon was saying, that this is a genetic kind of thing that comes down, but it's something in our brains.
Cool.
So interesting. I love when people ask me to explain the conscious and subconscious mind. I can say, look, I can tell you what I was taught in clinical hypnotherapy, but I think it's all bullshit because what I was taught in clinical hypnotherapy, you speak to someone in neuroscience and they'll say, we don't know much about the brain at all. So how the hell did someone that taught me about hypnotherapy know about the conscious and subconscious mind and, bypassing the critical faculties? Like, that's like all ish. All I can tell you is what happens when we do this. That's it. Because it's funny, the more we think we know, the more we're going to put our own dogma and blinkers on. Whether it's religion or just beliefs or scientific beliefs, you'll create your own reality, and then more stuff, I guess, feels impossible. Do you find, it's interesting, do you find that some pets are better at being able to communicate than others based on their, are some pets more psychic than others? Because I feel like maybe they need to.
I wouldn't say it's a psychiness. I think it's just like with people, like a willingness. So for instance, this dog I talked to with the couple from Boston, this dog had such a vivacious personality in life. I mean, he was practically jumping out of the gate to chat with me, just woof, and I got all this information, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
But this was a very loud dog. This was a dog in life that you knew he was in the room. Like there was no mistaking this dog was in the room, as opposed to, some animals, they're going to be quieter. For instance, I was talking to a cat today, and this cat was quiet. Didn't have much time here on earth, but was quiet and more reserved. And so of course it was just a different energy that I was speaking with. As far as psychicness, I would say that, so the more higher intelligence, or the bigger brained, if you want to say bigger brained animals, pigs and horses are a joy to talk to. Pigs, I actually had a pig this past weekend, or not too long ago. The pig quoted word for word what his owner called him. The pig said something like, I don't like, stop feeding me this crap. And I was like, that's interesting. I don't usually use that word crap. It must be what I'm interpreting. And the woman just starts cracking up and says, that's what my husband tells him all the time, is to stop eating that crap. But this pig was quoting word for word things that he was called. The pig was a riot. Horses, cats and dogs can be reasoned with, but they kind of will be like, I don't want to do this, especially cats. Well, some dogs do. Like, I don't want to do it.
Especially cats.
How surprising,
But horses, not only can you reason with them, but it's like horses are A plus B equals C. So like when I'm working with horses that are competing, I can say, okay, if you have this extra grain now, or if you allow yourself to get washed off now, this will help your performance with B. And they seem to understand that they understand that correlation. They understand that and they love it usually, because they're like, oh, they understand the connection. Where if I said, okay, dog, if you do this, you're going to get this, and it's going to equal this. They'll get to that second part, but not the third. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the horses and pigs can connect that third step.
Wow.
So, and I do think it has to do with whether it's IQ or just reasoning. I think, I don't want to say intelligence, but just kind of that, whatever it is, that's more of the reasoning. But I've been able to talk to animals from fish to snails to frogs, turtles, tortoises, reptiles, bearded dragons, snakes, spiders.
Are they different? I was going to ask about spiders. Are they different? Are they very different, like kind of reptiles?
So and this is just my viewpoint. So when I'm working with spiders and snakes, they give me a lot more images. Instead of words, it'll be images. And it seems like kind of the higher up, the more kind of words. So like with guinea pigs and hamsters, and I'll be able to get maybe a word here, a word there. So again, is it an intelligence, or is it, I mean, what, But snakes will be able to say, no, I want, or you move my light. Again, that'll be an image though. Did they move their light? Do they need their enclosure cleaned more? Like they'll be able to show me comfort. I had a skink once tell me, they had a wonderful enclosure, and then they had a plant, and then they had the TV, and the skink wanted, and they were not on video, so I had no idea where the skink was in the house. And the skink wanted to watch TV. Now, did they know it was TV? No, but they liked the movement. They liked whatever they were seeing that I
Interesting.
interpreted as the TV. They wanted the plant moved.
I'm finding
Okay.
it fascinating because it seems that you're communicating with the animal on the level of this that the soul is at the time, rather than when we sometimes do hypnotherapy, or say I tune into someone's higher self when I'm tuning into them that knows more than what their current physical
Mhm.
body knows.
Mhm.
So you're connecting with where the animal is at the time,
Mhm.
rather than the higher self that knows all their other lives and why
Yeah.
they're here and stuff.
Well, and that's
And tell you
the
their
need.
actual needs. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And,
So
and that's how I help them. Yeah,
Right.
that's how I help them.
So that kind of goes
Whereas-
to my other question. Sorry, was can you tell the difference, say, the vibrational level of communication between like animals and people? You answered that basically because they're going to communicate with you in a way that's kind of it's getting translated to you in a way you understand, and it depends, like, not only just between animals and people, but different types of animals of the
Mhm.
sort of intelligence or
Level
yeah,
of consciousness. I
consciousness
wonder
of,
if
There,
it,
yeah,
I
maybe
wonder
that's a
if
better.
it's level of consciousness
Yeah.
that's actually
I think that's
like
what
an
it is.
present.
ant
Because it's the same.
horse, for example.
I
Yeah,
think
like the
that's what it
difference
is.
of how they might communicate.
Or the ant is a hive is probably
Yeah,
where they
exactly.
talk about hive mind. Maybe the
That's the whole-
consciousness is
Yeah.
in that
Right.
hive
Yes.
rather than
Yeah.
specifically in that
Yeah,
being.
that's so interesting.
Yeah, because I've worked with birds before. I can work with,
Yeah.
I've worked with anything from cockatiels, a lot of macaws. I'll work with macaws are brilliant. Macaws are so smart. Cockatiels are as well. I've actually found a macaw before. So I've found a couple of lost birds. And they can have they have reasoning as well. Like
Okay.
those birds can be fascinating as
We
far as
have
intelligence.
magpies here in Australia, which is a type of raven, and
Yeah. Oh,
they
they're
Favorite.
are
smart.
so bloody intelligent, and
favorite
people, yeah, people have a big connection. Unfortunately, they're the head of a football club here in Australia that's probably like, I don't know, the Raiders over there, so it's fairly frowned upon. But the bird is quite impressive. Do you? Which brings me to kind of where people have spirit animals, and maybe the idea of spirit animals are that there's certain, and I think where spirit animals comes from, where it goes back and back and back, is the importance of certain animals with certain I can't think of the word. Good thing I'm not on a podcast. Attributes, like they're given attributes from thousands and thousands of years ago. Do you find certain animals, like, I guess I'm thinking that we're talking about birds, but I was thinking of snakes as well. So snakes were a very spiritual animal, and being around a snake gave a certain spiritual connection. Do you find certain animals are connected differently in any way, or is it just that you're connecting with the consciousness and it's really just the consciousness of that animal?
So I would say it depends on the person and their connection with it. So I have a client, she loves her spiders. She has like so many of these tarantulas, and she
awesome.
has such a deep connection with them.
Yeah.
And they all have wonderful personalities, and the tarantulas are very different, and they definitely recognize her as their caretaker. And so she identifies with them. But does she identify with the tarantula energy? I mean, yes and no. I think it's what, we make it out to be, in a sense. Like I've worked with a website a couple times with like spiritual meanings of like owls and elephants.
Owls, of course,
And I think that there is a deeper connection. But I also caution people and say it's what is said and then what you feel. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be what the whole, like what everyone thinks of as when you think of an elephant or when you think of when you see a monkey. It's about the connection that you feel with it. And it could be from past lives. It could be, it could be a number of different things, that you why you are connected to that particular animal. For instance, maybe you have this wonderful connection with monkeys. Well, maybe you spent a few lives with them, in so and so place. So of course you're going to feel
Exactly.
like
It's a different, you're connecting to a different energy. Yeah. It's
exactly.
not necessarily
So
the monkey. Yeah.
so that's why I think it's
Very true.
what you identify with. Like I love the
Mm.
overall collective, and I think that's wonderful to learn. When I'm working with clients, it's about how is that animal helping you? Why is that
Yeah.
animal in your life?
Okay.
And that deeper connection. But because we can put deep meaning into you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I remember a long time ago, I had a psychic tell me that my spirit animal was the elephant. And I remember at the time I was like, elephant, what? And now I get it. Or that my totem was an elephant. Do I still believe that my animal totem is an elephant? Yes. Do I feel a connection with them? Yes. But it's not like elephant, I'm going to emulate the elephant. It's wonderful to have that feeling and to know, but it's not my, like, you know what I mean? Like I also
It's not
connect
your
with,
path. Yeah. It's just part of
yeah,
a story, a bigger
yeah.
picture.
And
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. Because I
Oh,
think it, well,
100%. Yeah, it's two different things. There's one thing is the symbolism of the energy of a certain
yes,
animal.
yes.
And it's another thing, your relationship and energy exchange with a particular animal is a completely different thing. And it could be connected in many different ways.
It'll
Yeah.
serve you in different
Gotcha.
parts of your life. For instance, my
Gotcha.
mother
Yeah.
is still alive, but I'm sure after she passes, I'm sure she's going to be sending me all kinds of hummingbirds because that's what she loves,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
It's also what we're connecting with loved ones. And I remember the article I was quoted on about the owls. I think I mentioned that is owls are wonderfully symbolic
Mm.
of wisdom, but also ancestors, right?
Mm. Mhm,
So
mhm.
you may, but did your uncle love owls? You know what I mean? Like there
Yeah,
could
it
be
might not
so
be
many different things.
about the
There's more to the
story
story.
you read when you first
Exactly.
Googled it. Like you read 10, you Google something like that, and there's 10 different articles saying completely different things. So you really got to go with how
Yeah.
you feel. Yeah.
I think we're
So it's
coming back to it's all just soup.
Yeah.
So don't get too borrowed down into it because it is soup. So
Yeah.
it could be something else. Sure.
See, if you're at home and you do come across a spider, do you say something like, "What are you doing here, buddy?" And can they talk to you? Like, do you tune in and like take the time to ask, "So what are you doing? Why are you here?"
I don't have the energy for that.
You know, you can't be bothered. Like it's too much.
There was a spider yesterday morning. I was on my Peloton. And there was a spider. I will like if I see one in the shower, I'll be like, don't move. I'm not gonna touch you, but I'm in the shower. Like I'm not gonna get out to like but there was one, like I was riding my bike on the Peloton yesterday, and I actually called my spouse down because like the spider was just hanging out like above, and I'm like, okay. And to be honest, I wasn't talking to it though, because I was like trying to work out, and it started moving down, and I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, honey, please come get the spider. And he did. He took it responsibly outside, because of course then I would have been really pissed off if he hadn't. He knew better.
Yeah.
Oh man, I made that a
But
rule.
so-
Don't kill the spiders. I
Oh
will
yeah,
rescue it.
everyone
I
in
will
my
take
house.
it outside. You bunch of chickens.
So I honestly, I don't have the energy for that. Like because
Okay.
I'm reading so much. Yeah, no.
True. Yeah, it's like someone
I
asking
mean-
me, "Do you read everybody?" When you're no, I don't have the energy for that. Like,
God.
I can't be
Oh my
bothered.
God, that would
I
be
don't care.
exhausting.
Like,
Are there
Well,
dead
it's
people around
exhausting.
me now? Probably. Like
Probably
whatever.
whatever.
Can I get my milk and go?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, it's like people will be like, well, do they hang around you afterwards? I'm like, I hang up the phone. It's like I hang up
Yeah.
the phone. Like,
That's
okay,
it.
I thank you. Like, God bless. Like, well, that's not to say I won't have like my relatives that will try and like yell at me sometimes, and I'll hear things, and
Give
then
me a
that's when I
break.
start talking to myself, and my kids go, "Mom's talking again. Mom's talking to someone."
That's
Like my
hilarious.
great grandmother, I don't know what I was doing. I was thinking about her like last week, and I was doing something, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm not even like reaching out to her. I was like, how old was she when she died? And I'm just thinking this, and all of a sudden I hear 92.
Wow.
No, I'm kind of trying to figure this out. I go look up her date. I'm looking up, and I just keep hearing 92. And I'm like, and I was like, finally, I'm like, oh, that's who's yelling.
That
You're
is
funny.
hilarious.
And I was like, oh, because she rarely will come through. But she and then I said out loud, and my kids are downstairs. I'm like, oh, so you talk to me about a number? What about the other times I try and talk to you?
I know.
How
I know.
annoying.
Really?
Oh,
Really? You tell me how old you were when you passed, but you won't answer, no. I mean, it's
That's
just,
funny.
but those are the conversations.
Don't
Yeah, I
tell me the
use
secret recipe in your bolognese sauce. Like, what the heck?
and I think I know the numbers that your spouse wants you to find out, and that's probably connected to the lottery.
Yeah.
I just I just wanted to get back to the whole end of life thing with animals and stuff. I noticed as I was digging through your website and finding all of the beautiful things that you do, you have like a whole lot of free MP3s and stuff as well, and little meditations and stuff like that you offer, which I think is absolutely amazing and beautiful. What are some things that people can do when they know that their pet's about to pass? Like obviously they can contact you if they feel like they need to connect with the animal in that way. But what else can people do at that kind of that tricky time when their animals, their family members,
They're
I
not
should say,
sure.
are going to pass?
honestly, the best advice I tell people is to take lots of photos and celebrate them. Like if
Ah,
you feel like they're gonna pass, I say put that silly hat on their head. Like go treat them to a burger. Like you know what their favorite food is. Go give them the crappy dog food, or give them the s'more, right? Give them the s'more.
yeah.
Going,
Then,
like let them enjoy.
but I say take lots of photos, but do it almost as a celebration of life. Celebrate them, take them in the car, do
Yeah.
their favorite things, let them smell the air. Like let them go and experience, just like you were taking your grandmother for one last ride. Let them experience those things. I don't know how many animals that I've talked to, and especially it's interesting. A lot of animals I've talked to that I've worked with crossing, they a lot of them just want to go outside and sit in the sun.
Yeah.
Opening up the blinds, and also letting I think it's a great time to really come to terms with understanding that this is, I've never, knock on everything, but I've never spoken to an animal that was terrified to die.
Wow.
Never. They
Okay.
are so, it's to them, it's just a transition. There's no fear in dying. But a lot of times they will hold on for us because they're afraid of how we're handling it. So I think it's also a wonderful time for you to come to term, or not come to terms, but just like allow yourself to go, okay, what am I really upset about? Like, what is it? Connecting with yourself and then showing that love to the animal.
Mm.
I had a dog last week, and I was working with him for a few days, and he was passing, and he said, what did he say? He said, get off the couch. And I was like, what, get off the couch? What does that mean? Well, it turned out the owner had been sleeping with him, and the dog was like, I want my own space. He wanted
That's
to
so
sleep by
funny.
himself. And so
That's
it's
cute.
like, allow your pet, like you don't feel like you have to smother them. Like they're not, because they're not afraid to go. Like respect, give them that space. If they move away from you and go sit in the corner, that's okay. Don't get offended. Sit, sit out the side, keep an eye on them, but don't feel like you have to be in their face all the time.
Then it's
But go,
about you, not them. Like if you get offended.
well, and follow their lead. But if they want to cuddle, of course, allow them to cuddle in, but at the same time, respect what they want. And I think a lot of us, it's just listening to them,
Wow.
but I just say, put on the funny hat and just take all the photos, because afterwards you'll go, why didn't I? And even if you're sad, just celebrate them,
Yeah.
celebrate a birthday, give them one last dog cookie, whatever it is,
Yeah.
make it a celebration that they've gotten through this life.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. And we can tune into our pets. We don't have to be psychic to tune into our pets because we know them. We know what they love. So it's like tuning in, listen to them, and wow, that's beautiful. Celebrating those moments. Yeah.
It's a nice reminder too that not just with animals but with people, and it's like talking about doing their favorite things and going outside and breathing fresh air and just doing all the eating your favorite treats. Like it's just a reminder just to do that shit every day.
Yeah.
I
mean, it
enjoy
doesn't
life, man.
much. It's sitting in the sun. Working with animals has just reminded me how beautifully simple joy can be. Like how a lot of them just get excited to be around their family.
God,
And
we
it's funny.
complicate it.
Yeah, and it always has to be, there has to be, like, we make it into so much more. And then animals remind me every single day that sometimes it's just nice to sit in the sun.
Yeah.
We don't have to, I don't have to do
Simple
anything. I
pleasure.
can sit and feel those sunbeams and fit in my favorite chair, right? How many of us just try and more, like that we think that happiness is going to come from more. And I've learned from all animals that it's having a clean bed, having a clean litter box, or, it's little things that bring a lot of joy and a lot of comfort, or just cuddling up, sleeping next to your person. But it's that little stuff that goes a long way. Having your favorite pillow, right? Like, like I know I have this lumpy pillow that I don't know why I haven't changed it. And every night I go, I'm going to change it, and then I don't. But yet for animals, it's so easy. They just go to their favorite pillow. They don't care. It's beautiful.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, that's wonderful. Excellent. Well, we can't have you all night.
Yeah.
At some stage you have to go to bed.
Mm-hmm. True.
That's you, Xavier.
As I'm tired. As I just said.
That's right.
She just, yeah.
My tea is finished.
Exactly. And our time here is finished as well. The knowledge you've given has just been absolutely wonderful and great for people with their pets,
Thank you so
about
much.
the past.
It's so beautiful, and it's really nice for people to know that they can reach out to someone like you and get some confirmation, help if they're having trouble figuring out what's going on with their pet, as well as finding them. So thank you so much for opening the minds of us as well. Like I've learned a lot, and which actually you've inspired me to maybe practice a little bit more communicating with animals, because I have done it in little bits and pieces, but I haven't pursued it too much. So I'm really curious about it now, because the more of us out there to help, the better. So people can really get in touch with their animals. And so everyone will be able to reach you. You obviously do. Can you do readings and connections, just photos if people send it to you from?
Yes, just a photo. But even a lot of times I don't even need a photo. A photo is just able to connect right in. But
Yeah,
I mean, it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, beautiful. That's really good to know. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on our podcast and help people learn about animal communication. That's great.
Thank you so much for having
Nancy.
me. It's been so much fun. You guys have been such a riot. I love the fact, and you have such a wonderful balance of back and forth and of a knowledge base, that I think that your podcast in itself is such a useful tool, because it's not just a one-sided point of view of the psychic or the hypnotherapist. You've got a wonderfully balanced look at things, and I think that's so important, of course, just like in nature, to have that balance. So to have those different points of view is so powerful. So thank you so much for what you both do.
Oh, our pleasure. We're just us. Thank you. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you very much,
All
Nancy.
the best.
Nice to meet you.
That's it for another episode. Thanks to our sponsor, Subtle Energy Sciences. Click the link in the show notes to access their full product range of quantum healing technology.
And thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. We're so grateful for your contribution to keep this podcast going.
If you'd like to join our Patreon, you can receive bonus full episodes, early release, and monthly readings and meditations.
We love to hear from you, so please comment on our YouTube channel or email us at mickandthepsychic@gmail.com.
I'm a certified hypnotherapist and timeline regression therapist. If you wish to contact me to explore the source of an issue you're facing, just book a session at hernhypnosis.com and include the promo code MATP for 10% off. You can contact me on Insta and Facebook at hernhypnosis.
Check out my website at optimisticxavier.com.au if you feel you'd like to connect with me as a psychic medium, spiritual mentor, or intuitive coach. Include the promo code MATP for 10% discount. You can also find me on Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
We look forward to connecting with you again next time as we attempt to leave no stone unturned.
Bye.
All right, cool. I reckon that should be okay.